What's up, guys? You are listening to The Lifestyle Hub, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes and into the lives of inspiring individuals to not only educate you, but unlock your true potential to live a healthy, happy, and fulfilling life. I'm your host, Jason Grimmer. Now let's get this show on the road. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the leading home commercial gym specialist in the Middle East, Ghana Fitness Suppliers. Check them out at www.ghana.ae for all your fitness needs. Alrighty guys, welcome to today's episode, and I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Ciara Nolan, registered nutritionist with a master's in human nutrition, honors in health promotion, and specializing in evidence-based nutrition, also responsible for the head of nutrition at Dubai's leading meal prep company, Fitt Meals, who you all know that I love. Welcome, Ciara. How are you?
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
This is a first time.
Yes. Very scary.
I think it's first of many because by the looks of things, you're breaking into the fitness and nutrition scene pretty quick over here.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I suppose I am from Ireland, and yeah, I have one of those funny names that no one can pronounce. So that goes with a lot of fun over here living in Dubai.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I get called everything. So yeah, like you said, I did my degree in health promotion, which was a 4-year course, which kind of dealt on a lot of different health topics, which is really, really cool because you got to see it from loads of different aspects. So while I was doing that then, I really, really, really enjoyed the nutrition modules, and I applied for my master's in human nutrition. Got in, did it, became a registered nutritionist, and yeah, I suppose a few jobs then kind of like led me over to here, and I'm here since 2014.
Amazing. So if someone was to ask you what you did, how would you describe the role of a nutritionist?
I suppose when you say you're a nutritionist, it's always a tricky one because unfortunately nutritionist isn't a protected term, which means that absolutely anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. So that's why I'm always kind of proud, and I always push the fact that I'm registered. So basically, to be a registered nutritionist, you have to have at least a degree and or a master's on top of that as well.
Okay.
So there's a difference from when someone comes up and tells you, oh, I'm a nutritionist. And I'm like, are you really?
Yeah, exactly.
So like, I suppose being a registered nutritionist is very, very different because everything that you have to say has to be evidence-based. You're not someone who goes onto Instagram looking for likes and for follows. You're literally there to educate people. Yeah. For example, if I somehow do that and get swamped under this whole popularity contest that is now online, my registration is gone and my whole qualification is useless to me, and all those years are wasted. So I suppose that's kind of difference in what I do.
Okay. Do you find it like quite challenging these days with like the amount of people that would claim that they're, have nutrition expertise?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially a lot of trainers these days will manage a lot of clients' nutrition, and quite often, like I'm dealt with people who've been put through nutrition programs, etc., or plans, never seen any changes, or it's actually made them develop like, eating disorders and bad relationships with food from people that say they do nutrition or really they're just a trainer.
Yep.
And they offer nutrition. What, how do you view that side of things, especially over here in Dubai, because I think it's less regulated, right?
Yeah, it's really oversaturated as well.
Yeah,
which I'm sure you see a lot.
100%.
It's really hard because, like, I mean, obviously, if you like personal trainers and people who work with health, like they're doing the right thing by going down the line and trying to educate themselves more, and like that's brilliant. But I think they need to understand, okay, where their range is and where they need to stop. Like they can give the general outline, that's absolutely brilliant. And sometimes that's all people need, but sometimes it goes out of their scope, and that's where they need to be aware of, okay, this is not where I'm able to give advice anymore, and then pass them on to somebody else. Yeah. So a lot of the time I work with like some like PTs because they have clients who are with them for personal training, and then like they'll put them in the right direction, but sometimes you have more complex cases, and then that's where I'll step in then as well and help them. And then other times it's completely out of my range of scope as well, and I'll pass them on to somebody who I know is like a dietitian if it's a medical condition or whatever it may be. So I think it's knowing where your limitations are. That's I think the most important thing.
That's a good point, because you mentioned dietitian.
Yeah.
What would you say the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist,
So
a registered nutritionist?
So a dietitian is when you're in a clinical setting. So basically they'll always work in hospitals, not always, but most of the time they'll work in hospitals with medical issues.
Okay.
So I was really lucky in the sense that when I did my master's, it was a 1-year course, but it was alongside a 2-year dietetic course.
Okay.
So there was like 20 people who were doing the nutrition course,
Yeah.
and within that there was 5 people who were going on to be dietitians.
Okay.
So those dietitians went on and did 1 more year clinical experience.
Yes.
But what that was, and as horrible and as hard as it was, during the course, like I really got to see the importance of, okay, you can only deal with a person up until this, like I suppose,
To that point.
onto that point, and then you have to pass it on.
Yeah.
Because you can really see the dangers. So like there's things like refeeding syndrome, and it's all like renal, and like they deal with people who are in comas and are literally getting fed through pegs and tubes and stuff. So that, as hard as it was, it really, really opened my eyes and to where like you really have to be careful.
Yeah.
And how, I know it sounds silly, but telling someone the wrong thing to eat can actually kill them.
Yeah.
So you really, really do have to be careful.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so many levels to that, and I think it's so often like undervalued the importance of having the right, assistance, guidance, and help when it comes to those things. So that's cool that you're able to obviously respect those limitations, and that's something that I've always had to try and deal with as well. And I'm never like, I feel like people have this conception that, or misconception, where if you're a trainer, you don't come across maybe as professional, or you think the client might, undervalue you if you have to like you refer your services or that case to somebody else's services. I've always been so quick to go, hey, look, if this persists, we'll deal with the physio. We'll have email, communication, and we'll get you through that together.
Yeah.
I feel like that gives them actually more value, because they're like, oh shit, there's a bit of a team now looking out for me. He's sending me to the right person.
I think like you're there for like one job, but you're also part of a support system for them.
Yeah.
And I think if you think you're the person who's going to be able to provide absolutely everything for this person, then you're in the wrong, and you're actually like sacrificing a lot for the client themselves. So you need to just stand back and take a look of what you can do for them, and then where you can refer them on to help them even more. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's like, it's like kind of, it would be no different in a certain way to like me taking on somebody who has some sort of like, physical, ability that or injury that's quite serious, and then I'm just trying to wing it in the gym. It's really the same with people's nutrition. And I don't think people value how much damage they can do if they're offering the wrong advice to people. And I like we touched on just, a few minutes ago, the amount of people I've had that have come through and have gone on the most restrictive nutrition diets that I've probably ever heard of, on the lowest of calories, had issues with hormones because of it, mental health because of it. Yeah. Obviously, the physical side is just the surface, where they're actually not actually even changing physically and that kind of stuff. It's crazy. And then it's so hard for me to actually retrain that person. It almost is like this, like it's stuck. They're stuck like that, right?
They can't
how do you manage to like break that hurdle with somebody generally? It's quite it's a broad question for you, but like, how would you deal with that person coming to you?
It's really, really hard. And it depends on, you kind of as well, like you have to sit back and look and be like, okay, what stage is this person at? Like, are they actually coming to the end of like, okay, their mindset might change and you might be able to educate them better, or are they still in that zone where like, nope, I know best, my last trainer knows best, whatever. So you kind of really have to play it like everything in nutrition. It's case by case. Yeah.
That's the operative word, guys. I think it literally should be case by case.
Yeah, completely. There's there is no blanket terms in nutrition, which is unfortunate. Yeah. But it really, really is. So you kind of have to play it person by person. And I know that's probably not the answer you're looking for, but it is.
No, I get you.
It's all about education, and that's what I generally do. And I think people are always confused when they come to see me, because they think that I'm just going to tell them, oh, do this, this and this. But no, I like completely educate them from the beginning. And what I do is since I've done my master's, I've done a lot of work with kids in schools. So my master's thesis was actually on analysing the nutritional content in school meals. I then went on to work with the World Health Organization, childhood obesity. I worked actually over here with the government in schools, teaching health science and developing a new curriculum. And now with Fitt Meals, I go into schools and I do kind of workshop sessions. And Amazing. What you can see is that you need to get at them at the school age, because once they get to a certain age, and even sometimes when they get to teenagers, it's too far. They've already made up their mind on it. But when you can get them, especially in primary school, they're like sponges. And you can literally teach them And you're not teaching them this is bad, this is good. You're literally teaching them the basic science of nutrition. So what the food groups do.
Yes.
And then from there, then I think like it's not something that's going to be fixed right away, but as a generation, hopefully when they're like our age and adults, then that they can make the right decisions. And you're just trying to stop this whole craziness that's going on at the minute.
It is. And sometimes I think it feels overwhelming. Like, you know, I guess it's nice for you to feel like you're in that space where you're helping the kids learn, but like, you know, you'd know what it's like when you're dealing with adults, and it's like, oh, there's so many people, you know, from I guess 20 onwards at this point who are like have absolutely no idea when it comes to nutrition.
It's
people
insane.
Going their whole lives without having any idea.
Yep.
And it's just something that definitely needs to be addressed and probably should be brought in at a school level.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, because I always know when someone messages me or like whenever I'm dealing with a client, it's like literally you can see it in different generations. So I kind of always find like the 40 plus, they're very much on the side of like Weight Watchers and all those kind of like weight loss groups.
Weight loss shakes.
Yeah, Weight Watchers, all that kind of stuff. And they're in that frame of mind. And then you kind of have the group on it that then they're more so like, I don't even know what they are, but they literally have every kind of angle put at them.
Yeah.
But it's funny, you can definitely see how it changes in generations, and you can literally see this is what they were taught in school and this is what they were taught as they were growing up. So it really just shows the importance that you need to get them at a young age and do it correctly.
That makes so much sense. Yeah. I'm glad that there's somebody out there leading the charge there, especially over here, because I feel like the UAE does have a high rate of children that are overweight or not being provided the right amount of education or nutrition. A lot of things are potentially outsourced here in the sense that I know back in Oz, like, you know, healthy kitchens and healthy meals would be a lot more common. Parents would make lunches. I was that kid at school that basically had tuna sandwich, which was grim now that I think back to it. I had
God love who sat beside you.
Carrots in a little Ziploc bag.
Yeah.
I would have had I think Mum made me get these little milks at one point, and I just started trading them in for chocolate milks. But like I had the most healthy lunch you can imagine.
Yeah.
Did that like throw me off? Like there were points where my mates would have all the sweets and I would like be trying to trade. Obviously no one would want to switch with me. But then I'd have kids who literally come in and their lunch was like their mum or their parent at the time had literally gone to the bakery, picked out 3 or 4 items like donut, croissant, bagel, and a chocolate milk, and put that into a bag, and that was their lunch. It was still in the bakery bag, etc. And that was a daily thing. That wasn't like a scramble quick lunch. So I think like it does need to be introduced correctly at that age. And
completely.
Has it helped me, and is it the reason I've come down this road into health and wellness? Potentially, because it kept my body in a position where I was able to like perform or feel good and have energy to maybe be active. Because I think the kids who probably are either putting on weight at a young age don't feel comfortable moving in their PE class, etc. So it's like a trickle on, like a snowball effect. I do have a bit of a complex though with wanting sweet things because I felt like I didn't have that. So
it was put on a pedestal.
Exactly. It was like, I remember we had this thing called holiday pantry. So if Dad, basically with school holidays, Dad would be like, all right, we're going to the supermarket, pick whatever you want. You get one shop. And then for that 2 weeks off school, you can literally have whatever you want. So we could fill the trolley with the most crazy shit. The problem with that though, is like, I would like put them on a pedestal. And that's where I think this is something that you'd mentioned, I'd see on your Instagram, is obviously trying to find the balance to not exclude foods and include everything. How do you find that battle at the moment?
It's hard because, again, going back to schools, like when I was growing up like that, sweets were never off the market for us. Like it's even a funny thing now, as going home as a 34-year-old and my brother who's like tipping 40. After dinner, we both still, without thinking, we'll get up out of our seat and go straight to what we call the sweet press. And we'll just get a bar of chocolate. And that was always what we did. I still do it now, even now. Like my husband laughs at me. He's like, you're getting up to go to the fridge. But I never ever feel like now that I want chocolate every day, but I never binge on it because it was just always there for me. And I think then, like in schools, when I was in school, it was never banned either. And then I think it then became in that now it's like, no sweets are allowed, or it's only like a treat on a Friday, and it's kind of hard to know. Like, as you can, like everything, it has pros and cons. So it has the pros of, if you do have parents who are just going to literally give their kid a bag of donuts, it's going to stop that. But then you have to think about the long-term effects, as in, does it put things on pedestals where then we're going to think that, oh, they're like good, they're bad, and then that we want them even more. Because when you know you can't have something, you want it even more. So it's hard to know. It's the pros and cons. I don't think there is a perfect answer. So.
No, I agree. And I think even just lately, I've been dealing with a case at work where I've had the client's parents, and I'm training their son as well. And basically in that case, when they're having dinner, they're keeping it healthy. They're doing like a healthy cooked meal at home at night together. Okay. And obviously like quite conscious of like saying, oh, you can have this or you can have that, like keeping it healthy. What's happening is after hours, then delivery pops up and he's ordering, you know, a burger or chips or that ice cream, because in that setting, it's not accepted. They're obviously trying to encourage the right nutrition, but to the point where things might be excluded too much that it's causing this like behind the scenes binge eat or craving. So I think sometimes having that approach where it's like, okay, now we'll all have a bit of a sweet after dinner together. It creates that more like, you know, balanced environment, right?
It's really, really hard. And again, it's case specific because some kids will literally just always want something, and they're kind of, depends on their growth spurt as well. Like sometimes they are genuinely hungry and genuinely do need more food. So it's hard. And like I do deal with cases like that as well. And like that, you just have to find out, I suppose, it's not just there and then. You have to figure out what went on in the years before as well. Maybe why does the kid feel this way? It's a hard one.
There's a lot of cases in there. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to cover a few different things. We're going to go through some myth and fad busting now, and just some basic stuff, and we'll just go back and forward and what we think our viewpoints are. Obviously, like you mentioned, there's a lot of different viewpoints on these kind of things. So let's just see how we go. The first one I think that obviously a lot of people speak about is sugar and calorie-free options. Are they better for you? So what I mean by that is, calorie-free, sugar-free and calorie-free options. You know, like your Coke Zeros, that kind of stuff, or like stevia, for example. What's your viewpoint on that? Is that a better option? How do you view those kind of, you know, ingredients?
Again, if you're comparing it, of course, towards like something like, should I drink that or water? Water always wins. But if you're someone who you drink a lot of fizzy drinks and you're wanting to make a health change, and absolutely. Obviously it's not giving you any health benefits, but if you're comparing like for like, it's going to be the better option here. So it is definitely something that I recommend. Like if you have someone who is like way over in a calorie surplus, and they're having like 3 to 4 fizzy drinks a day, a really quick swap for them to reduce that is to just quickly change over to the sugar-free ones. Obviously, you're better not having them, but I mean, we all do. So in terms of whether you're going to go for a normal Coke or a Coke Zero, I'd go for the Coke Zero.
Yeah, and I've tried to do a lot of like different research on this over the times, because clients always say to me, how can that be fine, blah, blah, blah. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's still no real studies that show any drastic health concerns if you were to have, you know, 1 or 2 or 1 a day of a Coke Zero alternative.
No, like
opposed to having a full Coke where you've got the sugar content, etc.
So like the only, I suppose, the argument that people play here is the whole like that the artificial sweeteners are bad for you, but there's hundreds and thousands of different sweeteners, so you can't paint them all with one brush basically. So you have to look at that from a perspective. There's also like safety measures which people forget about. So if something was dangerous, it's not going to be passed, and it's not going to be allowed in your like food, your drink. There is a small bit of research not even coming out, but has kind of surfaced that it may be bad for your gut microbiome and your good flora. But again, it's only quite new, and we can't say whether that is true or false. The other thing again is going back to sweeteners. So some people who maybe have like a sensitive gut or have IBS may be sensitive to certain sweeteners. So it'll depend on what it is. So like some people will be completely fine with it. Some people may struggle. It completely depends.
So it's case by case, and in that sense too, obviously the big thing to remember is anything any form of overconsumption is generally going to cause some sort of issue.
Exactly, it's like everything is fine in moderation. And like I think a lot of the thing, and this will probably come back over the next hour, but when people think, oh, things are toxic, things are poisonous, it's the dose that makes the poison. So like there's a lot of things, even water, it can be poisonous if you have too much of it. So when some people start like on TikTok, on Instagram, start saying, oh, don't eat this, it has this and this chemical in it. But it has it in safe amounts. So it's like, that's kind of a flawed argument completely.
Yeah.
So like I said, everything is tested.
Yes.
And it wouldn't be allowed in there if it was a danger to us.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That's something to obviously think about, guys, when you are consuming everything. It's always to think about moderation.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a big advocate, not advocate, that's the wrong word. I'm a big person that consumes non-dairy milks purely because, again, I always put this on my Instagram, and not because I push that agenda, guys, as you know. It's just because my body simply can't tolerate dairy. So, and this has always been that debate about intolerance tests and foods that suit you. And I think people often look for intolerance tests being the answer to curing weight loss. We know that's not the case because there's so many more factors. But I always kind of try to push on my channels that it is important to listen to what makes your body feel the best. And if I'm consuming something, i.e. milk or like milk, it's dairy, but in most cases it's like pure milk or like ice cream. It makes my stomach uncomfortable. I get really drowsy, like really tired, super bloated. So it's just a discomfort. And I feel like my body's not really like optimal, which for me is just like, why would I, it's like putting water in your car and expecting it to drive or to function. So
you have an alternative that makes you feel better, so why not go for it?
Exactly. So this is why I think, and a lot of people are starting to realize like dairies for a lot of people seems to not sit as well. And like with clients, they'll come in, I'll put them through like a bit of it's called like a 14-day diet boot camp, and where I eliminate like the 8 major allergens. Now, I'd be interested in your opinion on all this, but basically my strategy behind that is just to, one, it causes a calorie deficit pretty instantly. 2, it will kind of flag up any real areas that might be causing any discomfort, because they'll feel a lot tighter through the midsection. You know, bathroom movements will tend to become a bit more regular and able to track. Less drowsy, less fatigued, less cloudy or foggy. So after that 14-day period, then I slowly introduce foods that they're missing. So my question to them is usually like, what are you missing? What is it that you're like, I really want this? And people will be like, coffee, like milk in my coffee, a bit of chocolate before bed, or in this case, something like bread. I'll always reintroduce those, but then I'll just be counting the portions. So like, sweet, these are your calorie limits. Let's re-add this. Let's re-add this. Let's re-add this. Go for 1 week. How do you feel? Then we go again the next week. Okay. So I'm like eliminating initially. It's really short term, and then I'm bringing everything back in, because I kind of have the same approach as you in the sense that nothing's really off limits, and I like them to make the decision of whether they want to feel a certain way after eating something or not. Long story short, back to the original point, is why we're getting to this, is the dairy alternatives, almond milk, what have you got? Coconut milk.
Soy milk, what do you have? Yeah, almond milk, coconut milk, oat milk.
Oat milk. Yeah. There's literally everything. I've had macadamia milk before. That's actually quite nice. Quite expensive. It's the new craze. Why do you think that is? Obviously, I've kind of just touched on it. What do you think's the real reason behind it?
A lot of it, again, I think as usual, comes down to a lot of people are just being bombarded with things on like TikTok and social media, telling you this, telling you that. And I think one of the big things is that everyone tells you is like, oh, dairy is inflammatory. It is only inflammatory if you are like lactose intolerant, or you have like a cow's milk protein allergy, which is completely different again. To the general public, it's not. And it's absolutely fine. So that's where you need to figure out, are you lactose intolerant or not? You clearly are lactose intolerant from listening to you there.
Do you think that comes from anything in particular? That might be a hard question, but like, do you develop it? Like I felt like I used to, or do you just become more aware of it?
I don't know. It's a funny one. With a cow's milk protein allergy, generally what will happen is kids will have it until they're about 5, and then they'll grow out of it. Whereas lactose intolerance is a little bit different. But like, I've lost my train of thought now. But it's a hard one, because Westerners, like I think it's like 5% or something generally are lactose intolerant. But when you get over to like the Asian side of the country and Africans, they tend to be kind of more common to have lactose intolerance.
That's because it's typically not in the diet. In their diet, so they're not really used to it. Another thing why I think that people are kind of jumping on that bandwagon as well is because, again, TikTok and Instagram throwing stuff at you, but you have people telling you that, oh, we're the only species who consume another mammal's milk. But like, humans are the only species who do a lot of things and don't do other things. Like, we're the only ones who have jobs. Yeah, that's true. We're the only ones who wear shoes. So that argument is flawed straight away. But I think it's just people, like, they hear that and then they're like, oh, I'll try that. And then maybe they like it, maybe they don't. So it depends. But it's not something I would
recommend unless I feel like you are actually lactose intolerant, because milk is so nutrient dense. Like, it's incredible, and it's really, really good for like after a workout as well. It's so high in protein. It's so high in nutrients. I have a small bit of lactose intolerant. But like, I hate it because I understand the benefits of milk. I'm like, I really, really wish I could have it. So it is not something that I would choose to do if I didn't have to. And then with lactose intolerant as well, it's funny what you said, you're terrible with milk and ice cream, which makes perfect sense because it's a different level of lactase and different things. So you can probably find that you can tolerate hard cheeses better because they have a less amount of lactase in it, which is the enzyme that you can't break down, basically. So yeah, it's, again, it really, really depends. But I do think a lot of it is coming from the whole like Instagram, TikTok world. If it is something that you feel better on, happy days. And like I said, it's brilliant that you now do have alternatives. However, I would make sure that those alternatives are fortified. So fortified means that they're like the nutrients that are missing in actual milk are put into it, so that you're not losing out on all those nutrients. That's a good point. It's probably definitely something people don't look into. No, it's not.
So guys, there's the answer on that one, because that is a big craze, and you know, there's probably no chance of you paying less money for those, because now a coffee costs me like 25-30 dirhams because I get like almond milk, and then so obviously companies are having a field trip on that as well.
Unreal.
The next one we're going to touch on is calories in, calories out. Is that all that matters when it comes to weight loss?
Okay, this is a really hard one. It's not really hard one. It just can take ages.
Let's not shell it. Don't like layman's terms.
Okay, so like on paper, as in if you have consumed a lower amount of calories than you, like if you exercise your output, then you will lose weight. In reality, it's not that simple. Because like we spoke about earlier, it's like all about like your environment, it's all about education. Unfortunately, like, and I'm sure you find the same, you get so many people being like, I don't know what's going on, I'm in a calorie deficit and I'm still not losing weight.
100%.
So like there's reports and there's studies that show that people actually underreport their calorie intake by up to 40%. And they overestimate their calorie output, so the amount of exercise they're doing, by like 30%.
Spot on.
So
changes the game.
Exactly. So like when you actually do it in like a research setting, like a controlled facility, and people are given a calorie deficit towards their calorie output, it always works. But it's not the same in reality. And I think that comes back to where you need the support team as well to educate people, to support them and be like, okay, let's try this instead. And then that's what will help them. Another thing I suppose that makes it a little bit more complicated is that sometimes like calories, if it says like, let's say for example, you have a packet of nuts that maybe has 500 calories on it, all that 500 calories isn't absorbed in your body. So it depends on the type of food as well. So you might not actually absorb all of that 500. So people who are tracking like meticulously, that's not what happened then when it actually gets inside your body and your body does the work, for I suppose simple terms.
So there's a bit of a process there where it might be, you know, more or less or less than they calculate. That's cool. Like I think even yesterday I had a conversation with a client. She was like to me, she's going through her 14-day diet boot camp at the moment, and she's like, can I have a little bit of nuts? And typically I'd take nuts off because it's like one of the eight allergens, etc. Nothing wrong with nuts. But I was like, well, look, like what we can do is two things. She did mention that she wanted to add chocolate back in. And I was like, come back to me, go punch the numbers on 40 grams of nuts and then one of your favorite chocolate bar. She came back, it was 250 for 40 grams of nuts. I don't know exactly what nuts she wrote down, I can't remember. And then it was like a Snickers. And the calories were, it was 30 calories higher to have the nuts. So your viewpoint on that approach, now obviously keeping in mind macronutrients are totally different, but from an overall weight loss perspective long term, if that one bar kept somebody on track, would that be not the worst of substitutes? How do you view that kind of approach? It's like the if it fits my macros approach, which was trending a little while back, a couple of years back.
That was a really
it was a while
one
back.
For a while.
It was, right?
It's hard because if you're looking from just the calories in, calories out, and it's just a pure weight loss type of thing, you have to go for the lower calorie because that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for an overall health approach, you're going to get a lot more nutrients from that bag of nuts than you were from the Snickers. And I think one of the things as well that's like, I obviously knew it, but I think I'm only realizing how bad it is perceived. But people for some reason think that weight loss and that skinny and that low calorie all mean healthy, and they don't. Like, I've had clients who are technically, they're very overweight, they are obese, but they're much healthier on paper than one of my clients who's like really, really technically skinny. So I think we need to try and find a balance and of getting clients to realize that, okay, skinny doesn't always mean healthy. Low calorie definitely doesn't always mean healthy. And weight loss doesn't always mean healthy either. So you kind of have to, again, case by case basis, you have to look at the client, you have to look at what their goals are, you have to look at the long-term health effects of it. And like what you said there with macronutrients as well, is, let's say, for example, the person's calorie intake should be 2,000 calories per day. They can get that from Snickers completely, but you have to look at then that macronutrient is all coming from fat, and not just fat, it's coming from saturated fat. That's going to have negative health effects then down the line. So you have to make sure that those calories are in line, but they're also coming from a balance of good foods that like contain nutrients as well.
So it's finding that right balance between the two.
I think that's like a big issue. People don't understand that balance.
No, 100%. That's like something that I definitely struggle with. And like, I think I have so many people that be like, I'm just an all or nothing person. And I'm like, how's that working for you? Like, everyone loves to say that. And like, it's like, it makes them sound more hardcore or something. It's like it's like this, like, it's like saying I'm so horribly I'm in such a horrible position, but I have what it takes to be in such the most perfect optimal position because I'm all or nothing. And then I'm like, well, where are you? I'm like, how often do you spend in that optimal stage? I can guarantee it's not much. And they, sure enough, are always in this stage when they're coming to me. And I'm like, there has to be there has to be the middle, because no one survives up here. There's a small percent. And I would say sacrifices to be in that place are more than most people would be willing to give. Exactly. What is your thoughts on that? Finding that middle line?
I think people love hardship. Like, people are nearly disappointed when they come to talk to me because they think I'm going to be like, right, you can only have this. And then at lunchtime, you have to like stand on your head for 17 minutes while eating something ridiculous. Like, they kind of want you to come up with this ridiculous scenario that's going to randomly fix them. And they're willing to do that. And they're willing to do these crazy things that make no sense. But yet they're not willing to just have a balanced breakfast, have a balanced lunch, a dinner, exercise, sleep, have less stress. That's generally what it takes. Like, it is multifactorial, but you can get a good balance on it. Whereas people, like you said, they just want an all or nothing approach, and I feel like they want someone to come up and create this magic thing that doesn't exist yet that's going to solve all their problems. But unfortunately, life doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't work that way.
No.
And that's kind of like the same issue that people have with like juice fast detoxes. They'll want to go down that road for long term. And that can obviously have lots of negative effects on the body. What are your thoughts on that in a nutshell? How do you view those?
You can't. Like, simple science, you cannot detox your body. You cannot cleanse your body. Your liver, your kidneys, your lungs, your skin are what detoxes your body. It's a complete another market employ. It's something that instantly boils my blood when I see the words detoxes and cleanse. It's because it's there, and it's there to attack vulnerable people. And like, I'm sure you're the same. You see people who come to you and they're very vulnerable and they're feeling really shit about themselves, and they want anything, and they're willing to pay anything and try anything for it.
Absolutely.
And that's literally targeted at them. And simple science, you cannot. So there's nothing you can take, unfortunately. So there's no tablet, there's no shake, there's no juice, there's no one food that's going to detox or cleanse your body. If you want to help your body, you can like eat more fruits and vegetables, drink water, exercise, get some sleep. That's going to help your body detox. So your body's designed to do it for you anyway. So you don't need to waste any money on the extras.
Drink less alcohol.
Exactly. That's the one.
That'll have you feeling like if you just stop drinking booze.
Literally.
Like, I'm not saying that's a long-term thing, but if you just want to feel that like slightly less lethargic, a little bit like, your body's functioning, just have a little less grog in the week.
Yeah, it really is. And like, it's funny because if you ever notice that whole detox cleanse thing always everywhere come January.
Yeah,
It's
that's
because
right.
everybody's had a crazy.
Yeah, it's like we've just been
Christmas.
hitting the booze every day. So it's like, oh, let's detox.
Yeah, everybody's just hung over.
Why don't you just stop having alcohol every day of the week and you'll be okay?
Yeah, that's it. Like, and what I always find as well, it's generally the people like who have this like hectic lifestyle. Maybe they're big busy businessmen who like have to attend all these like events, and they're the ones who are always looking for these like quick fixes. And you're just like, no, you just need to try and pull back on the alcohol, if not cut it out.
Yeah, self-discipline.
Yeah.
I like to always tell clients to like communicate with talk to your peers about what you're doing, because the people that will always say, oh, just have this, have that, deep down really probably would admire you to say, look, I'm following a plan right now. And they want the easy option or that validation that what they're doing is okay.
Yeah.
So I'm like, be the one to say to them, hey, I'm following something. And quite often that person will, maybe not then, but maybe later, like, oh, Bob said no to that today. Maybe I should try that.
Yeah.
And like it builds this like healthier culture. So for all the suits out there, because I hear this all the time with clients, like, oh, it's a work lunch and he said we're going to Burger King. And I'm like, why don't you say we're going here where there's, I'm picking today. We're going somewhere different, or there's no booze today, or whatever it might be. Yeah. But I think it's voicing that, right?
Yeah, and I do see a little bit, thankfully, of a trend in people actually not drinking alcohol as much. Definitely, like I know the Irish community, we're known for loving our alcohol. But I do definitely see a kind of a change in trend where, like, if I went out even like 5 years ago and was like, oh, I'm not drinking tonight, it would straight be like, what is wrong with you, or
judged.
are you pregnant? Like, it's just,
right.
just there's no in between.
Yeah.
Whereas now, if I'm like, oh, I'm not drinking tonight, it's just like, oh, okay. Like, it's definitely becoming more acceptable.
Yeah.
Now that's probably coming with old age as well. But
the fitness culture here is like still going strong.
Yeah.
Like I think people are more conscious.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, I've got more clients at the moment all jumping on the meal plans, and like I feel like that's a bit of a talk of the town. Like, they're like, yeah, I'm on a meal plan. Like, I feel like it's coming with like a bit of a rep.
Yeah.
Which is
cool thing to do.
Yeah, which is good, because I think it showed people like, yeah, I'm looking after my body and health. So I'm glad that we're moving in that direction slowly. Yeah. Breakfast, most important meal of the day, yes or no?
I don't know if you can technically say it's the most important meal of the day, because every meal is important, but it is a really good way, to set yourself up. I kind of feel like that. Even I'm terrible with breakfast, and I try to have them better all the time, but I do notice that the days that I have a better breakfast, I have more energy throughout the day. Come the evening time, I'm not finding myself like with my head in the fridge or my head in the cupboard looking to see what I can find. So it does set you up for the day. And I suppose because of the meal types that you typically have at breakfast time, it can be a really, really good way of getting a lot of nutrients in. So it can be a lot of way of like putting extra fruit and different things like nuts and seeds. So you can actually make your breakfast really, really nutrient dense quite easily.
Okay.
Because of the type of food that you generally consume at this time. But I never skip breakfast.
Never skip breakfast.
I don't know how people do it.
I'm that guy.
Are you?
But not for, I agree with you totally. Like in the sense that like, yes, you can get some of the most important nutrients in that meal. And I think if like just to put that in perspective, if you're not eating them in that meal, I think people will struggle to find out somewhere else to put them. Yeah. So that's a great point, and one that I actually didn't have on the top of my mind. I only do it purely because I like to restrict my calories for later in the day from that perspective, which does affect and does compromise my performance sometimes, or like even my cognitive function. So like, totally valid. Like I think, I've kind of found a bit of a system, like that whole fasting in the morning. It's not because of that. It's just I feel a little bit better. But that's not to say I'm still having some protein at about 9 a.m. So it's not like there's no breakfast. It's just finding those meal timings that work for you. And I think sometimes people's breakfast doesn't mean 7 a.m. No. If you're waking up at 8, driving to work, and then you're having your breakfast meal, then
at your desk,
that's fine, right?
That's totally fine, yeah. And some people, because some people literally cannot eat straight away when they wake up because they feel sick, and that's absolutely fine. I know some people who literally can't face food until maybe 11 or 12, and that's fine. That's what works for them, and
that's
then
their breakfast.
That's their breakfast. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. But I'm not a nice person to be around if I miss my breakfast.
Yeah, no, totally. Totally. It's one of those meals. It's like a comfort meal as well. I think.
But like that, I generally have something small when I wake up, and then like that about 9, 10 a.m. Then I'll have kind of a more typical breakfast at my desk and work.
Yeah, cool. So there is a strategy there. So that's another thing too, guys, just planning out your meals, having a bit of a strategy. Yeah. Macronutrient ratios mattering more than diet quality. The the pressure that's put on protein as being like the magic thing, people often feel like if they're hitting that macronutrient, everything else is in line. Do you have any, like, you know, again, layman's terms, because I know this is a very broad topic. When it comes to hitting your macronutrients, how do you view the three, and like what do you typically advise for people to kind of keep a bit of an eye on?
So like macronutrients are brilliant in terms of like a guideline, and it can really, really set people up into kind of, I suppose, a very basic education and like, okay, you need this amount of this amount of this, and this amount of this. Where I don't like them is when people get obsessed with them. So I often see clients and like they genuinely would be pacing the kitchen floor maybe before going to bed being like, I have like 10 more grams of protein, and like they genuinely think their body's going to explode or all their good work is going to be gone if they don't have those exact figures. But it's a really, really good way of setting up a guideline. Again, the typical boring answer, it's a case-by-case basis. So generally what I'll do with my clients is I won't actually give them specifics. Unless it's someone who's been really like in the like fitness industry, knows what I'm talking about, then that's fine. But if it's a general person who's new to kind of this whole lifestyle change, I'll keep it much more basic. So I'll generally educate them first on absolutely everything. I'll give them a rough idea of their protein. I won't give them specific targets because like that, I know they'll get obsessed with it. So what I'll do is I'll give them usually like a little window to play around with for a while. And then as the weeks go on, then that's when I'll start kind of setting it down. Yeah. What I'll generally do as well is get them to think about it rather than figures, to look at their like plate. If there's someone who's done a lot of exercise, like I suppose the typical answer is that people should have between 45 to 65% of their daily intake calories from carbohydrates. But if you have someone who's like an athlete or who's in the gym the whole time or whatever their sport is, it can even go up to 75%. So it's more so kind of like I get them educated on, okay, and like what works. And then you'll find is that some people, what is on, I suppose, the perfect thing to do doesn't work for them. So you'll find some people who are technically like sport athletes and they should be having a really high amount of carbohydrates, and then they find themselves just not being able to manage on it at all, and you have to bring that down for them. So it's something that's not as simple as going on to an online calculator, typing in your stats and getting this amount of carbohydrates, this amount of protein, this amount of fats. You really have to play around with it. Okay. And I think education comes with that as well.
For sure.
Yeah, that can answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, I like the approach of not overwhelming the person too at the start, because I think a lot of people, then they come in, it's so much to absorb. So it's just trying to find like just the simple things. Yeah,
and I what I find is I find a lot of people who you know have literally neglected their health for maybe 20, 30 years. They've heard about macronutrients from someone in the office or someone in the gym, and they're like, oh, this is the answer to all my problems. And they're like, give me my macros. And it's kind of more so, okay, no, you need to understand what each of those macros does first. Yeah,
totally. No, I think that it's definitely something that needs to be kind of played around with like carefully, because it can cause people to like over obsess with certain numbers.
Get really, really obsessed. Yeah,
definitely. And again, you know, the point about obviously certain people can manage it, that is so valid. Like I'll have people who come in, they've been through the ropes before, potentially that's like, you know, they like having that slight little bit more of a structure, but it's just not painting everyone with the same brush and saying that that's the only way to do it. You know, the idea of like something I always say is like being a personal trainer is like, you know, the systems and all the most effective structure and processes are already out there and proven. My job is just to find what works for that person the best. And I guess it's kind of a similar approach when it comes to nutrition. It's just finding what works for the individual.
It's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
And I think people hate that because people want a quick fix and they want you to tell them like they literally want it in like black or white, and you're like, no, okay, we're going to try this. If it works, happy days, but if it doesn't, we're going to have to try something else. And I think people in Dubai are really the worst for it, because they're so used to having things at their fingertips, like they have Deliveroo, they have cat food, like, and everything they want is handed to them. So I think they literally think that you are going to just automatically hand them the perfect plan. But yeah, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
It doesn't work that way, guys. Dubai people. We are one of them, aren't we? Yeah. So supplements, waste of money. It's a big, we won't dive into this because like guys, we know supplements is one of those crazy topics. It could go for hours. Yeah. But that headline itself, supplements are a waste of money. Yes or no?
Yeah, it should always be a food first, supplement later.
Okay.
Obviously things come into different like play, as in like if someone is like vegetarian, if someone is pregnant, it completely depends. But yeah, if you can, it should be food first and then you supplement later.
And it's in the word, isn't it?
Exactly.
Supplement. Think about it. It's so important.
Yeah.
I always have people kind of come to me and they'll be like, oh, so what subs do I need to get? I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I'm like, when it's appropriate, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Of course I'll have protein. You know, it's a supplement, more or less, it falls in that category, but I like to use it as like a bit of like a recipe spice up, or like a good way to like be a bit more creative with your recipes, and
really,
you can
really
still
useful.
kind of get your protein in, i.e. like protein oats. I know Fitt Meals does a lot of like protein based like breakfast options. So like it can be useful in that sense, right?
Yeah.
But not obviously a meal replacement.
No, and I think the issue is that people see photographs and they see things on Instagram and they see ads and they see like this like person who has like this really good physique and they always have a protein shake in their hand.
Yeah.
They think that's how they got it. They didn't see them getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning, probably doing something on their lunch, doing something after work, and all the like really healthy diet that they had in between. Like they just think, oh, that's my answer. That's the protein. Like, but people generally meet their protein requirements without protein shakes. They are really useful, like don't get me wrong, but they're not the answer to everything.
It's a convenience key to get adequate amount of protein for some people. Especially like sometimes vegetarians, like if you want a pure source of protein, I've used it in that sense a little bit just to, you know, give them a little bit more options. But I think I went for years without a single protein shake. I just was, one, because they were all whey based and vegan protein didn't taste very good. So I just didn't have it. Literally my physique didn't really change. I've added it back in now just as like a backup. It's in my lunch bag. And if I'm like short on time and I can't sit and eat, I'll just have, you know, some almond milk or water with this protein, and that's just like a little snack in between to just satisfy me for that half an hour. But it's not a meal replacement, and it's not like the magic answer.
Nope.
So that's a big one, guys. Don't get sucked into that. Carbs, we're gonna move into our rant on the social media world in like a couple of minutes. But last one, carbs make you gain weight, yes or no?
No.
Yes. I mean, I agree with you. They do not make you gain weight, people.
No. I think people just have such a bad opinion on them. Again, social media. But if you look at gram per gram, like protein, for every gram of protein is 4 calories, and the same for carbohydrates. I think why people think that they are this whole like weight loss crazy thing is because when you eat carbohydrates, the normal function of your body is to store it in your muscles and your liver as glycogen, which is what you want because that gives you energy. When you cut out carbs, that glycogen goes, and what happens is with every gram of glycogen that you have, you store 3 mils of fluid water with it. So when you cut out carbs and you lose weight, you're not losing fat, you're losing water weight. And I think that's a huge thing that people need to understand is there's a difference between weight and there's a difference between fat. And what we want to do is we want to lose body fat, but we get really confused between, did I actually lose water weight or did I lose actual fat there? So
a good example to look at that, guys, is if you eat something that's carb dense, maybe at night, and then you hop on a scale in the morning, and like you're up X amount, and people, I mean, there's a few more variables than that, but people will be like, oh, how did I gain? It's like, well, you didn't gain fat overnight. Like this is not how it works. You've just maybe held a bit more fluid, maybe slight inflammation because of something. Maybe you've not gone to the bathroom, like, or had too much water, whatever it is, but it's not like fat that's going on. And that's obviously the misconception with carbs. So I'm so glad that you said that. You think of it as energy. Right? That's how, because people will be like, you know, don't fats give me energy, and like, no, that's only like the small percentage that actually do keto correctly, and again, it's like a small percentage, and it's very fine guidelines, but no, a carb is our main source of energy.
And like we need it. And I think the funny thing is, like, when people come to you, they come to us because they want to feel better, and a lot of times like they're lacking energy, but then they're like, I want to cut out carbs, and you're like, but you're lacking energy.
How does that work?
You're like, you're completely not going to help yourself there. So again, it goes back to people don't understand basic science. Like, carbohydrates is energy, and it's what you need, and it's super, super important. So no, I think another thing that comes in is that they're really, really nice. We tend to overeat them. Like, it's a lot easier to overeat a plate of carbohydrates. 100%. Like if you're giving me a plate of pasta, I'll eat it in seconds, where it's harder to do a plate of protein. That's right. So it's usually overconsumption, which leads us into the next one. Obviously, the social media world throwing in some obviously fear mongering around like some really like, I guess, sensitive topics that a lot of people place a lot of value in, that people, you know, the amount of people I've had say, I saw this on TikTok or that on TikTok, it's crazy. And it's like, definitely, you know, almost not discrediting us, but like it kind of
it makes us have to compete with this like whole online world of, you know, a lot of cases just bullshit. How do you think nutrition has made, you know, or how has social media made nutrition more confusing for people?
Just in every way. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, as in every single time. I sometimes just try and not go on Instagram and TikTok because I literally get so angry. It's like anyone, like I said earlier, anyone can call themselves a nutritionist, and that's what happens. And they go on, and like false information has actually been proven to spread faster than real information. And like I said earlier, people want the cool answer. They don't want the basic answer. They're wanting this really like something unique that they've never heard of before, and they want to try it. So when people put out all this kind of stuff, people get sucked into it and they want to try it. And then it's really hard for us to come back and then be like, no, it's actually just eating in moderation, exercising, sleep, stress. But like, people don't want to hear that. And it's just really, really hard.
I'll never forget, like, I mean, it happens all the time. I'll put up some content, whether it's fitness or nutrition related, generally more fitness. But when I put that up, and it'll get no traction. And I'm like, okay. And then I'll see something else and I'm like, that's absolute bullshit. And the likes are through the roof. They're sharing it. There's this, that. I'm like, what's going on? Like, people are just jumping on top of that because, one, it's different. People will say to me, oh, I saw this person do this on Instagram, and they'll show me this exercise. I'm like, all right, justify to me why that's going to help you. Like, oh, but look how look at this. I'm like, oh, you just like, it looks different. Doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. If it was, I mean, assuming after 12 years of doing this, I would have probably figured that that's probably the best thing for you to do.
Exactly.
So it's like, I'm guessing you deal with this all the time.
I think it's a lot of clickbait as well. It's actually funny. If you go onto my Instagram page, the last 2 posts I've been kind of playing around with. So generally I'll just put up like a no nonsense post, but I've been putting up like kind of the first page is like 3 reasons why. And I've kind of reversed it so that people think, oh, she's going to tell me something magic. And it's so funny. I get so much more traction on those ones. If I put up a recipe, so I can put up a recipe of whatever, people, the usual, will come on like it. But if I put it up that it's a protein thing, it will get so much more.
Oh, like a protein this or protein that.
But it's exactly the same thing as when I didn't put the word protein in, and I didn't try to make it as a protein dish. But people just love that kind of clickbait kind of stuff. People get consumed into it. It's really, really hard.
So that's something to think about, guys. Just take a step back, think for a second right now. Are you the one absorbing that kind of content? Are you often conflicted with different views? You know how nice it is to feel like you know exactly what you should be doing because someone has prescribed you, someone with credibility has prescribed you a plan for you. Maybe it's cost you a little bit, but initially that can be so much more beneficial because I feel like, you know, I've got my plan from my coach and that's all I know. I'm like, I've sat with a professional, he's given me my plan, I check in with him, that's it. So when I see all that bullshit on IG, I just kind of, you know what I mean? It's usually the people who are kind of lost and looking for that answer, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah, it is. That's exactly. And that's who they're like trying to hit as well. And like one of the big things now is these people in the supermarkets who are going around screaming, like picking up things and be like, don't eat this, it has this in it. And it's generally like an apple or something. And like, but that's it. People, they suck the people in who are like, they're looking for a quick fix. Like I always say that like people don't want the whole just boring, non-sexy stuff on the page of like just basic science. They want something cool. They want something different. And I think that's more of like a psychology thing with people as well. The way society's moving and people needing that attention grab, that dopamine fix of something new and different. So. That's it. Like, but I always like tell people, and especially when I go into schools, like with Fitt Meals, it's like think logically. You know, like kids these days are way more advanced than we were when we were that age, and it's like, okay, sit down for a second when you see something like this because they're getting bombarded with this as well. It's like think logically about it. If it sounds too good to be true, it more than likely is. That's always such a good concept to follow because it's legit. It's a very simple one to ask yourself. And then, you know, if you were to say, what are the major red flags, or, you know, let's say 3, for example, what are the 3 red flags that you see quite often, you know, blasted on social media? People trying to scare you. So telling you that like something is absolutely insanely bad for you is trying to kill you. If someone is trying to tell you that you need to cut something out of your food, or someone trying to sell you something. I always tell people that you should only exclude something from your diet if you are allergic or if it is from like cultural beliefs that you can't eat something. other than that, like, there is nothing that is technically bad for you, and everything is in moderation.
Okay. There you go. Just think about those three guys. Super important. Are you falling, victim to those clickbaits at the moment? If you are, I would say it's probably time. It's obviously that you're looking for an answer to something.
Yeah.
Get in touch with a professional. We'll plug ourselves here in this case, whether it's fitness or nutrition. But get in touch with a professional. Maybe it will cost you initially, but it will save you a world of confusion.
Yep.
Obviously, going around in circles when it comes to actually seeing yourself attain any sort of results, right?
And a lot of time, I'm sure you see it as well. It's kind of sad when you you see people and how they do fall for this kind of thing, is because, like I said earlier, they're so vulnerable and they're just wanting to find, maybe to feel like they're part of a community, or feel like they're going in the right direction in life sometimes, and that's just where they fall into these traps.
Just to wrap up today, obviously we've covered so many different topics, and it's been such a bit of a roller coaster of information. So I hope you guys have really valued a lot of your knowledge and expertise. It leads me to our Lifestyle Hub question, which is, what do you think the key is to living a healthy, happy and fulfilling lifestyle?
I think moderation and balance. As boring as it sounds, it is. Everything in moderation. Looking, I suppose, that health is multifactorial. So don't think it's just nutrition, and don't think it's just exercise. I know I've kind of quickly said it a lot of times during this podcast, but it is true, like, that people are always surprised when they come to me, and I'm like, okay, you need to look at your sleep as well, and you also need to look at your stress, and you need to look at, like, are you giving yourself time? Because I think recently, and I think since people have got back on track after COVID, they're getting overwhelmed by being back in this busy, hectic lifestyle again, and it plays such an effect on your mental health. So I think it's like just realizing that health is completely multifactorial, and it's not just one little thing.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. It's a really valuable little bit of information there. To wrap up today, guys, Ciara is obviously in charge of all the magic that happens out of the Fitt Meals meals that you guys all love and enjoy. Obviously, I'm a massive fan. So a bit of a thank you for that one, because they've actually been amazing.
Yeah. We just kind of give good food in portion controlled sizes. We don't try fluff it up with anything fancy. Yeah. It is what it is. It's good food.
I think the best part is that the quantities are extremely generous. Yeah. The protein serves generous. Obviously, the calculations are bang on, in the sense that, I've had all my team losing weight in the right direction, and the meals are tasty enough that it's been able to be something that they're like, this is all I need. Like, it's ticking all my boxes. Like, I've had clients message me like, how am I eating pasta? Like, is this okay? Like, and I'm like, yes, just trust the process. Yeah. Everything's okay in moderation, like you've just said.
That's it.
So
portion control is a huge thing.
It's a huge thing. There shouldn't be anything that you cannot have. No. And I hope that's something you've taken away from today's episode. Ciara, thank you so much for coming on the show, being so open with obviously the whirlwind of the nutrition world, obviously what's real and what's not, and focusing on the scientific proven systems, but obviously also following people who credited in that area and push the right agenda. Yep. Hope you enjoyed coming on.
I did. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Where can we find you on your socials for those wanting to stay up to date?
So you can find me on my own nutrition page, which is Ciara Nolan Nutrition. Ciara is spelled Ciara. So you can find me there, and then I'm always on the Fitt Meals as well page. There's different things there. So FITTMEALS.ae and our Instagram page as well.
Amazing. I'm sure everyone will be clicking that straight after this episode. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, very welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Guys, hope you enjoyed today's episode. Plenty of information. It's been great to have an expert on. Obviously, I've spoken about nutrition here and there. We're definitely going to have Ciara back in the hot seat at some stage very soon, because I think it's an endless conversation that I know I'll have so many more questions, and it's actually great to be able to offer you guys, an expert in that field to answer all of your questions. So lastly, I do have a quick favor to ask before we go. If you're enjoying the podcast, please let me know, and you have a minute to spare. I'd love to read your reviews. This lets me know what listeners like or disliked about the show, so I can make sure to give you all content that you love. So please subscribe to the episodes now. Before we go, one last shout out to our lovely sponsors, Ghana Fitness Supplies, the leading home and commercial gym specialist in the Middle East. Be sure to check them out at www.ghana.ae for all your fitness needs. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me on the Lifestyle Hub podcast. I'll catch you later.